unprepared. You guys got to be faster. Okay. All right. Let's look. Where are we headed? Okay. How about I make it big enough for us to all read it? There we go. Okay. So that's where we've been. Here's where we are. This is actually the 21st where we're first getting started into human behavioral ecology. Okay. We've got, you all right?
Yeah.
Oh, I just like, oh.
I'm helping her out with some
Okay. Okay. All right. Got to make sure everybody's okay. Okay. So our week's assignment starting today, right, is, oh, that's a weird, I guess I flopped them. I don't know how that happened. It wasn't like that before. Okay. Conservation in practice, old science, new science. This is our update on the Umilit whaling, right? And their involvement in counting whales with NOAA, right? National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. Then Garrett Hardin, the tragedy of the commons, right? How many people thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe he said what he said? No. Yeah, okay, lightly. Oh my gosh. All right, we'll talk about it, right? And then foreign policy, how conservation became colonialism, right? Okay, now here's your assignments for this week. It's going to be due next Wednesday, okay? So you see how we're kind of slowing into next week, right? So next week we'll get on some of the other topics, right? Which I'll show you in just a minute. And then we'll have our release of the midterm on next Thursday, right? Cool, okay. All right, so for this week, due Wednesday. Let me make it a little smaller. There we go. Okay. I want you to go to a website called Breathing Earth. How many people have heard this?
No.
Nobody. Okay, so let's check it out right now. Check it out, man. Oh, nerds. Okay, Adobe Flash. Click it. Allow. See if it gets it. Yay! There we go. Okay. Ooh. You hear? So it does stuff, yeah? You hearing the noises? You can mute it if you don't want to, right? Okay, so what are we seeing here? Take a look at this. When I hover over, oh, thank you, you're awesome. Yes. Isn't she cute? Okay, so hover your, kids are fun. So hover your little cursor over a country and you get population. This is what's called a live rolling data set. So you've got one person dies every 12.1 seconds and it might be changing. Born every so many seconds. The number of thousands of tons we're excreting every certain number of seconds, right? Okay. Since you started watching, oh my gosh, it's been so short. We have, as a country, emitted 13,000 tons. 14 of carbon, right? CO2 emitted per person. Wow, that's a per capita number, right? Per country. You'll see in a minute. Okay, so emitted, okay, so we've got some of these over here. 300, it's still going. People have been born in the world. This is the number of people that have died in the world. And the number of tons of CO2 that have been emitted in the world since we started watching. That's a minute 42. So you've got all the math, right? You see that? You can even take a screen grab and get all the math at once. So that was just the United States. Here's Mexico. 1,000 tons every 1.2 minutes. Ours was every 5.3 seconds. Let's go to Brazil. Every 1.5 minutes. That sounds like Mexico. Let's check out Nicaragua because they're cool. Every 2 hours. What does that tell you?
Wow.
Like, not very much, right? It's a lot slower. Okay. Okay, let's see what else. Let's go to Panama just for kicks. Where's Panama? There we go. 1.4 hours. So there's more. Costa Rica, second world country. 1.1 hours. Interesting. Okay. Shall we go to Canada? 56.3 seconds. That's ours. What was ours? 5.3 seconds, right? Let's check it again. 5.3 seconds. Okay. How about Greenland? Let's go to Iceland too, right? 2.9 hours. So Greenland was like, what? Are you kidding? 15.4 hours it takes them to emit 1,000 tons of CO2. Okay, let's see. Anywhere else you want to go? Germany. Alemania. 35.8 seconds. So kind of in between us and Canada, right? Let's see. China. Russia. 20 seconds. China. 5.2 seconds. Oh my gosh. Kind of seems like they're worse, right? Just in that regard. Okay, so here's your instruction. Thank you for all that. And you can just like mute the sound on the site and all that. So your instructions are this. Go check out Breathing Earth. Yes?
What was the sound supposed to
I don't know. I think there were supposed to be births.
like?
Births. Like
human births?
Yeah, human births within the country.
That's weird. That's wrong.
Check it out, okay? Because I'm not positive on that. You check it out yourselves. Yes.
How does it get the data on like who's dying and like
Yeah, it has all that data over on the side about deaths and births, and that's per country, or not per country. That's global. That's global. So that they're getting a lot of this data is collected by the World Bank and another entity called the World Resource Institute. They collect a lot of this data. Okay. Another option, if you're bored of this whole idea and you want to do something else, so this is for your class discussion, you're to go to either one of these sites, check it out, and then have a discussion about it, right? Here's your other site. Are you ready? Okay, here's the current world population. Births per year, deaths today. Oh, crap. That's not cool. Oh, right? Look at the numbers spent in public health care for government and economics. That's global, I think. Yeah, global. Right? Military, glad it's less than healthcare. Huh? Education, glad education is more than the military. Kind of, I mean, yeah. Social media, look at that. Those numbers are just radical. Look at the number of emails sent today. How do they figure that? I have no idea. So you can go and click on this and say, how did that happen? Sources, and go check the source, okay? Tweets, environment. Oh, no. There's your big number, right?
Jeez.
Desertification, number of hectares, right? You can just transfer that into acres. Yeah, toxic chemicals. Undernourished people, overweight, died of hunger, money spent, various categories. Water, energy. Look at that. Solar energy striking the earth today. We have 1,619,000,000,000 and some bunch of millions megawatts, right? The megawatts. Huh. Oil pump today. Interesting. Healthcare. Cigarette smoked. Blah. Right? Today. Money spent on illegal drugs. Oh my gosh, what did we hear the news about illegal drugs today at our border? Did you hear?
Is it about the gas station?
A second. Border, of course, to the border. So it's like, anybody know about this term? This is a popular term in Hawaii. Batu is another term for it because it comes from the Philippines. Yeah? Crystal meth. Okay. Yuck. I mean, that stuff is like screw with your brain, right? On one time, right? Ugh. 900 pounds. Okay. All right. So go to those sites, Breathing Earth and Worldometers. Check them out and then have your discussion. Here's your writing assignment for the week. Okay. Can you think of other examples of a global commons? We'll talk about that, of course. What are your thoughts on mandating cooperation in environmental protection around the globe? We'll even talk about how that's done, right? And we've kind of sort of gotten there a little bit, right? And we've talked about coercion and the World Bank and those kinds of things. Okay. Number 3, what did the scientists do in Barrow, Alaska in conjunction with the UMILIT, right? There's your reading, okay? Talking about monitoring the numbers and all that kind of stuff. What is the overshoot theory? We briefly talked about that. Related to natural resource, we'll talk more, right? And take the ecological footprint test, which you did for the discussion, right? Were you surprised by your results? What do you think of the test? So I just want, you can just give me your personal stuff in that way, okay? All right, so that's your assignment for next Wednesday, all right? Don't really have an assignment for next week yet, even if we're gonna do one. I might do one discussion and just leave it at that, right? Because I'm gonna release your midterm on next week. So that's kind of like, this is enough, right? Okay. All right, so just to remind you as to where we're going as well, you'll want to get started reading the Alcorn reading for next week as well, okay? And it's actually just a latter section of an article, okay? And it should be kind of fun. Should be kind of interesting, okay? So I have all the or the lecture up, so if you need it, it's here. So that's next week. Whee! All right. So our topic today is talking about human behavioral ecology. Oh, wait, before we get there, I want to ask, was there any more that we wanted to discuss in terms of Mililani Trask's reading? Okay. Maybe we can, if there is anything that you come up with from now until next week, we can talk about it on Thursday, okay, as we go into talking about the midterm. All right. Aha. All right, so I brought some books by Bill McKibben. How many people know Bill McKibben? Raise your hands. No, really? Okay, let's see. Scary Math, Rolling Stone. So this is one of the things that he did a little bit ago in the news. Gosh, let me see the dates. Where's the date? Oh, there it is, 2012. So this was a while ago, right? Global warming's terrifying new math. And we get to read into it. This is from Rolling Stone magazine, so it kind of hit a lot of places all at once, right? Talking about climate change here, talking about temperatures, talking about changes in the degrees that we have in terms of our averages, right? So he came out with this in 2012. It was also based on some of his other work. Now I have 3 of his books. Yes.
Oh, did you hear about the black snow that rained in Russia?
No. Was this recent?
Yeah, it was like a week ago, I think.
You know how to stop me. What?
What?
Sky in Siberia. CBS, pretty good. Let's go CBS. Black snow falls from the sky in Siberia and it's toxic. Yuck. Let's see. 2.6 million people. Ugh. Toxic black coal. Ugh, yuck. Released from air from open coal pits. Improperly maintained factories in the region. Wow, that's like a massive violation of their human rights, yeah? Terrible economic spill. Bless you. Not economic, ecological spill, pardon me. Whoa. In July 2018, Siberian factory town was drenched in a red blood rain when improperly stored industrial waste was caught up. It must have been the waste was red, right? Yeah. Huh. Wow. I don't know how they're dealing with it. Let's see if there's any other news about it. Covering towns, eerie, disturbing. Post-apocalyptic, strange. Yeah, all kinds of crazy things are going on, right? I mean, supposedly NASA just released some weird thing of the Borealis in the shape of a dragon. I don't know what that's all about. You guys let me know, okay? All right. So, all right, talking about Bill McKibben. He came out in the beginning with a bunch of his thoughts to academics in a book called The End of Nature. I know how long ago it was when I read this. This is my college brochure for our soccer team. Right? I'm somewhere in a picture on here. Anyway, I think. And his idea was nature's ending. Nature is ending. What we know about nature has changed drastically. Okay, just a general question of you all. Has the natural environment that you knew, grew up in, parks, favorite places to go, beaches, mountains, all the like, have those places changed?
Yes.
Raise your hands if that's a yes. Raise your hands if that's a no. Maybe a couple places. Okay, so yay, there are still some places in the world that aren't changing, but a lot of places in the world are, right? And they're changing in drastic ways. In fact, some people even say the changes that we're seeing, one of the biggest effects on us as humans is sadness. What do you think about that? I mean, we see these places there. No more fish on the North Shore, right? We hear, can't go there to go fishing anymore. Our favorite place, right? So he came out with this book called The End of Nature. We'll pass it around. Then he came out with a book called Deep Economy. Okay. And his reference was, hey, maybe there's a different kind of an economy that we can look at rather than the one that we're working on. Maybe some examples might be having some kinds of carbon credits. Anybody know about this? What do you know about this?
It's kind of like, it's like similar to like Kattan trade.
Yeah, okay, so like, let's say I'm flying to Rome, right? And I'm concerned that flying is like huge. You go and take that test. Flying is huge, right? So in terms of your ecological footprint, right? I can buy carbon credits that offset my trip. That means the money that is dedicated goes into some kind of climate fund thing, right? And so my dollars spent are ideally offsetting the amount that I'm right putting out when I'm flying, right? So that's our idea. Other ideas have included putting 10 more cents on your coffee cups or your coffee or other kinds of tax, right? Carbon taxes, okay? But those are some of the ideas that we're talking about in terms of the deep economy, okay? So I want you to be able to know about this. And look at this. Oh, I had a student borrow this one, didn't think I'd ever get back, so I bought this one. So if anybody wants it, you can come and take it at the end of the class, okay? Extra. And then lastly, he came up with a book called Earth. You like the spelling? I'm dyslexic. I like the spelling. No. Okay, so what he says about using two A's in this is that we now have a different Earth. This is like Earth 2.0. It's not the same Earth. Never going to be able to get back to it. Some things we have destroyed beyond recognition, he says. And so we now have a new kind of Earth that we need to be looking at. Okay. All right. So another piece. Okay. All right. I just got to share my books with you, right? So, okay. Here is the classic book on the overshoot theory. Okay. William Kattan, right? So if you want to know more or write that down, I don't think I'm going to ask you an overshoot question on the midterm, but it's on the homework. So you might want to look his name up, see what he had to say. Yeah. So, okay. Overshoot theory. And for all those that like to joke, right? What happens when we destroy our Earth? I had to get this book. I was fascinated, right? How to Survive on Mars, right? Hey, let's go to Mars. That's kind of a joke book. Have fun with those. Okay? Yay. All right, so when we're looking at human behavioral ecology, what we're looking at as anthropologists is how we might apply evolutionary principles, like you might find in ecosystems, right, to behaviors of humans and our cultural diversity. So what do we do to maximize our existence, to continue to survive, while also dealing with living off of natural resources and land and things like that? Okay, so that's the field of human behavioral ecology. And we want to start with talking about Malthus. How many people have heard of Malthus before? Thomas Malthus. Okay, a couple of people. Anybody read the essay on population? No. Okay, so his theory is that, we've got a problem. Just like that overshoot theory, we expect that we are going to overshoot our resource base, right? So we have this idea that resources kind of develop and expand and grow and increase to this kind of a rate. And then he says, when we look at our population, we have a different kind of curve. What do we call our population curve? Do you remember?
Is that exponential?
Exponential growth, also known as a J curve, right? Because it's in the J. Okay. So we've talked about our human population as being on an increase in this kind of a curve, right? In a J curve exponential growth, meaning we just are doubling and doubling and doubling and doubling on top of each other, right? So we ought to expect that at this juncture, we'll have a point where the human population outstrips the natural resources that we survive on, right? So we said, this is a really terrible thing. This is really concerning. We can see where we're headed. Oh my goodness, look at the year. Anybody feel shorted on our climate issues now? We've done for a long time. Look at it. It's like disgusting. I don't know about you, but I still feel kind of like the X generation that like got dunked on. Y'all feel the same way? So we've known about this for quite some time. We've known that there was this issue. In fact, when Malthus was starting to write about this kind of stuff, Darwin was starting to write about this stuff. Adam Smith was starting to write about this stuff. Who's Adam Smith? There you go. Wealth of Nations, Capitalism and the Wealth of Nations, right? He's our classic theorist in terms of our economy, capitalism, right? So a lot of people, each in their different areas, were focused on this new problem that we came to realize, and that was, oh my goodness, our populations are growing out of control, and we're not going to be able to support it. So what's going to happen? Well, let's check out what we do in the economy. Let's check out what we do in nature. Let's check out what happens to population dynamics, right? So all of a sudden, we're having this big, huge focus on this problem of exponential growth. Even Ben Franklin had some things to say about it, right? So we have a new term that's introduced when we begin talking about this, and it's called carrying capacity. Economists, environmentalists will be using carrying capacity and even do it so mathematically. So therefore, we have a letter that represents carrying capacity, and it's known as K. Okay? If you hear of something called K strategists, write that down if you're an environmentalist. K strategists are people that will focus on maintaining their carrying capacity of their natural environment per their people group. Okay? So like one of the examples we might have would be the Mayagna, right? They have only a certain amount of land, probably about 10 to 15,000 square kilometers. Okay, that's a big area, about 18% of the country. Okay, so looking at that and looking at their population, they got about 40 to 45,000 people. Not 40 to 45,000, but 40,000 to 45,000 people, right? And so with a distinct border, that means that they have to manage their resources. Remember, they're only making $800 a year on average. Yeah, some make more, some make less. But on average, that's what we got. And if we say that this whole group is about 75% dependent on the natural resources of their forest, managing this and the carrying capacity is critical. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about the Mayagna and who they are. Okay? Mayagna are known as semi-nomadic. Okay? What does nomadic mean?
Move around.
Move around. Okay. So semi-nomadic means we move a bit, kind of. Okay. So there are different examples of semi-nomadism all over the world. Okay. I'll explain to you about the Mayagna's approach. Okay. They have two approaches. One is every 25 years, they have traditionally picked up the entire community and moved. All the communities. They do this for a specific reason. No electricity, didn't used to. Now they have some solar. No running water. Can you think of why they might want to move every 25 years?
So they don't deplete the resources in one area?
Not so much. Close though. Think about what you do as a community that's very isolated. People die, you bury them. Everybody uses water, everybody puts off waste, right? Think about what happens when all those people are in that same area for over 25 years, right? Ever gone camping for like 5 days, right? Got to find a place for the, you're right? Dig with your shovel. See what I'm talking about? So it's about cleanliness and health. So to be healthy, they need to move every 25 years because that's the way that they're living, okay? Traditionally, okay? They've been making some changes more recently, right? Also, they have another aspect about their movement, and that is they have planting seasons. So they will go into the areas of land in the inner parts of the rainforest, plant, harvest, come back, right? While they're planting and harvesting, they're also looking for gold, panning for gold. They're also hunting, fishing, and you might see them coming back with live animals. One of my neighbor, while I was living in Awastingni, she came back with a live, he was a spider monkey, I think. Took him all the way to town. He crawled all over, made a mess, and was just irate on the bus. Okay. Environmentalists heard of the sale of live animals, yes? This is an example of how that happened. Fetches a pretty penny, right? I think she got about maybe $200 for that live animal. That's huge. Think about it. $800 a year. Only got to do that a couple times, right? All right, so we have movement happening with the Mayagna. We have movement that is long-term. We have shorter term within the year, right? We know they're planting. If you've heard of the term slash and burn, this is their agricultural style. How many people have heard of slash and burn? Okay, how many people heard it was awful? Okay, so there's the critique out there. What's the critique? Why do we not like slash and burn? Anybody know? Have we just heard of it? Okay, that's okay. I don't want to pressure you, right? So slash and burn, to many people that just hear about the environmental critique, to many of those, it makes us think that we're just burning the forest, right? We go and plant, and then we burn the forest, and the forest can catch fire, and it spreads, and all this kind of awful stuff can go on. Okay, so a lot of the critique has been in that direction, but let's talk about what it is that they do. Okay, so they're in a rainforest. What happens in a rainforest? Rains, yeah, okay. And what happens to soil when it rains really heavily in a rainforest? What happens to the soil? I mean, you just go outside and see what's going on with our soil, right? Did you see what's going on with our soil with all the floods? What happens to the soil?
It's loose and muddy.
Washed away, right? Okay, does anybody know what that process is called? Okay, so we have what's called a leaching of the nutrients in the soil as the soil gets washed away and all the nutrients get washed away. So to be able to take a seed or a plant and plant it in that kind of a forest with the forest continually washing away won't provide very much, won't grow very healthy. Almost need to put fertilizer on it. Can't even do that, right? Because it's real expensive. Might not even be the thing you want to do with chemicals, right? Okay. So we're looking at how we manage this process of slash and burn. And if we have a problem with the soil, the first thing that we want to do, might sound strange, is burn. Why is that?
If you don't burn it in a controlled burn, then a larger fire will break out later.
Okay, controlled burn, important. Don't like the bigger fires. There's another reason though. What's the other reason?
It's something like you're burning like the dead stuff that's kind of already there, and then
Good.
the like having these fires helps that dead stuff because it will provide nutrients for the new. Like it makes.
Ah, yes, nutrients. When we burn stuff, we get nutrients, right?
New things happen.
Absolutely. Nitrogen. Burning these plants will put nitrogen into the soil. This is exactly what we need to grow, right? Among other things. Excellent description. Thank you. Okay. So first thing we do is we want to slash an area that we're going to work in, right? So we cut it to make it easier, right? And to kind of stop the burn, right? And then we light it on fire, burn it. The nutrients get into the soil. Then we plant. And we can use that field continuously for about maybe 3-4 years. After which we'll have to burn again. And if we burn the same field, fertility of the soil goes down. Does that make sense? Like we're overusing it. Okay. So what we tend to do is we leave that area that we were working for, say, 4 or 5 years, and we leave it fallow. What does that mean? What is fallow? Anybody heard of that word before? Rest. Rest. Fallow. So we let it rest. We let the land rest. And we go to a new part in the forest. And we slash, and we burn, and we plant. Okay? Now, if we have a specific area, some have said that this is unsustainable. Now, the Myagna will show you that it is sustainable. What would be some of the factors that make it unsustainable, do you think?
Maybe you try to use it for farming and you don't let parts of it rest. Yeah, there are too many people.
So if our population increases, the soil fertility decreases. You see that in the long run. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we will see that it can be unsustainable if the population managing this lifestyle or this method of farming has an increase in population. So in order for it to be sustainable, they have to maintain the population or maintain it below. Yeah? So what I'm telling you is that the Myagna people, as a culture group, maintain their population in conjunction with their environment. Remember, we saw their environment reforesting, right? So one of the things that they're doing is they're coming together and they're talking as a culture group and they're talking as territories and they're having a conversation about population. I found this out by chance, right? Found this out by chance. I said, how do you even talk about this kind of stuff, right? How do you even talk about this kind of stuff? And the leaders say, well, don't you know there's plants for that? And I said, what do you mean there's plants for that? Oh, there's a plant that can help you get pregnant. There's a plant that can keep you from getting pregnant. I'm like, oh my gosh, right? I mean, obviously we know there's more involved, but plants. So he's telling me of knowledge that is really actually pretty high on our list of medicine needs these days, right? How to get pregnant, fertility issues, how to keep them, right? This is fascinating stuff. Anybody wants to biopiracy that kind of information, right? Don't want that to happen, okay? But in essence, what we've done is we've taken a system that some have assumed to be unsustainable because of our typical method of, or our typical experience of population growth. But in cultures that are maintaining their sustainability on land, they're making some suggestions. Hey, everybody, let's scale back. And that's what's being said. Hey, everybody, let's have less kids right now. We have a problem. We're getting invaded by the lands. Maybe in 10, 15 years, we can bump it back up again. Fine. We don't have to say this is forever, right? What other culture did that? China did that, right? 1970s, about around when I was born. Have you seen any news about this lately? Oh, bad China, bad human rights, they kill female babies, bad, bad, bad. No, 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 no. Not what I'm talking about. What have you seen about their programs in the news? Yes.
Aren't they like phasing out the one-child policy?
Phasing it out. Why? We want to get as many people on the world as possible. Why?
Because it worked.
Because it worked. Okay, so yeah, there were a lot of criticisms. There were a lot of accusations. There were a lot of things that people were not happy with. But what they did was to instigate a population policy, and it seems to have worked. And now we're relaxing things because it has worked, right? And it has done some fascinating different kinds of things to society. Okay, so for a while we heard this idea that boys were of preference, yes? Okay, all right, so we heard about that. Why was that a preference? We'll just go through this exercise. Why were boys a preference?
I think just like the way the culture will also like later on like the boys like would take care of the parents when they were older.
Okay, so taking care of the parents, yes?
They carry the family.
Carried the family name. All right, more business oriented, I don't know, whatever kinds of things were said, right? So that's what we heard. But then in the last 20 years, as people have been looking at this policy, they've been noticing something, right? When it comes down to only having one child in the family, when it comes down to having only one person to take care of the parents, we started to see a shift whereby when people got married, they moved to live with the female's parents, which meant, guess what? We now have a change in preference for females. How about that? Think about that. Huh?
What was the reason?
Because I'm not sure what the shift was. We'd have to do a whole study on how that happened and why it happened and what in the cultural side was responsible for that. But it shifted, right? So now we have a different kind of focus that was created by that law, right? That has shifted our cultural aspects about it, okay? And another thing that was famous about it was that a lot of people that were in that culture found that their cousins had become much closer. Does that make sense for anybody? I'm an only child. My cousins are like my brothers and sisters, right? So we have some shifts that happen in terms of the sociocultural relationships between people, and that's how they were controlling their environment, okay? Kind of on a massive scale. There's some other examples around the world. If you Googled something called zero population growth, you would be able to find other examples. There's some island communities that have done it. Fascinating stuff. So if you're interested, go check that out. All right. So also in talking about these issues of lifestyle and living and living with the land. We talk about sustainability, right? What do we want to sustain? That might be one of our biggest questions. Okay, so what does it mean to be an environmentally sustainable society? Here's your definition on sustainability: meeting the current and future needs of the people in a just and equitable manner without compromising future generations. What do you think about that? Yay! You like it? Meeting current and future needs, just and equitable, without compromising the future. I like it. Sounds nice. I don't want to screw up the future for anybody, right? Now, when it looks to a couple of these words, I don't know what that means. Do you? Just and equitable. Do you know what that means?
It changes.
Have we a universal worldwide agreement on this? No, just look at your test on your footprint, of your ecological footprint. Did one with my daughter today. Hers came in 3.8. Oh my gosh, she's only 11 and hers is already 3.8. Right, it was our behavior, right, collectively. But, right? What does that mean? Does anybody know what those numbers of Earths mean? Anybody heard of these kinds of footprint questions and tests? Do you know what they're testing? Do you?
Yeah, it's just like basically like how much you eat, like your water use,
Your consumption, right?
Yeah, all consumption in every way. So like travel too.
Yep, we did the airplane went phew, and shot it all over the place, right? So what it means is that if everybody else consumed like me or like her, everybody in the world, we'd have to have 3.8 Earths. Oh, great, right? What we want ideally is 1 or less, right? And a lot of my friends would come in at that. But a lot of us here, North America, right, we come in pretty high, okay? I remember at one point I was at 4, so I'm glad that I've dropped down, right? So, interesting to think about what just and equitable means. So, this is one of the things that we're talking about at the IPCC is how to figure out what a global measure of just and equitable is, because we can't instigate anything for social and environmental controls without knowing that kind of thing. Wow, controls. That sounds like a weird, scary word when I say that, doesn't it? Okay. So the next series is a bit about the kind of theory of environmentalism, approaches of sustainability, really from ecological socialism kind of an approach. Okay, Marxism, call it Marxism if you want. Must be certainly clear that a lot of our academia is grounded in Marxism. So we'll talk about it from that perspective. Let's look at the economy. In order to have a successful economy, our economists tell us, even Adam Smith, what does he tell us? What do we need? Growth, right? Okay, how much growth? A lot. So if we're growing less than 3%, we call ourselves what? We're in a recession. Growing. Even growing our economy at a 2% rate or 2.9% rate, being less than 3%, we look at it as being in a recession because our economy has to continually grow, right? So one of the problems with that is looking at the environment, right? Because a lot of our concern here has to do with growth. The end of nature you're looking at, right? We had some books that came out in the 70s. It's called The Limits to Growth. They said, hey, there's a limit here. Yeah, we're going to the moon again. And oh my gosh, we're growing cotton on the moon? Yeah. Wait, what? Cotton on the moon? That was made out of cheese. No, I'm kidding. No, we're growing cotton on the moon. This is a new experiments we're doing. We're going to Mars and we're doing other experiments, right? So we are in a present issue dealing with this concern about limits and limits to our own growth, okay? All right. Of course, we know there are perpetual and renewable resources, finite, and those that replenish, right? Let's get into the tragedy of the commons. Okay? So we talked a little bit about the commons, right? Did we talk about it already? I have 2 classes we talk about the same thing, so it's hard to figure out where we are. Did we talk about the commons yet? No. Thank you. The later class is faster. Sorry. Less people is probably why. Okay. So, the commons. Back in England, we had industrialization beginning. And one of the biggest things, industries in industrialization, that was started in England was the textile industry. Anybody remember this? Is this kind of familiar from what you remember from history? Okay. All right. With the textile industry, we had a very big need for wool. With the wool needs, we had a very big need for grazing animals. Okay. When we had lots of animals that we were grazing for this industry, right? Lots of people had animals. Lots of people had them grazing on what we had called the commons. The commons back then were common lands, lands held in common by everyone, kind of like national parks or those kinds of ideas. But these were open to everybody, okay? And what happened during this time was something that was tragic, right? Is what we find out. What happened at this time was, what can you guess? What was the tragedy of this commons?
People started looking at their own self-interest.
Own self-interest. We put too many animals on the commons. And what happened when we put too many animals on the commons? Oh, crap. We overgrazed it. Overgrazed it. Like overgrazed it so much it was no longer available, right? Anybody been to Ireland? Yeah? You ever seen a lot of trees there? What do they use to burn their fuel with? Like fireplace. Do you remember? Do you? Peat. Peat. They ran out of being able to burn trees. They now dig into the earth, dry it, and burn that. Okay, by example of things that we've, over harvested. Okay, so England, we over harvested the commons. What we did is we put too many animals on the common lands, and we knew it. That's what Garrett says. He says, it wasn't just that we were like, oh, who knows what's going to happen? It was, we knew what was going to happen, and each of us selfishly, purposefully put one more animal on those common lands, and all of us collectively together destroyed it. Because this is what we do. This is what we do, right? Remember the Pleistocene? Overkill. Remember that? Did we talk about that? We talked about the megafauna that died off, right? During the Pleistocene era. Did we talk about that? No, we didn't get to it. Okay, so we had the Clovis. How many people have heard of the Clovis? Okay, there's some news out that say that Native Americans in North America are all related to the Clovis. Okay, so we had the Clovis coming over the land bridge, right? Bering Strait, dropping down into the Americas, so we think. Again, this is all theory, right? And when they arrived, they killed off all the megafauna, vast majority, right? Woolly mammoth being an example, okay? So the idea that we learned from this was a theory that we developed called the Pleistocene overkill theory. And that was, when given the chance, humans will shoot themselves in the foot. We will act selfishly, and when we act selfishly in our environment, it will destroy the environment that we are relying upon for our life. When given the chance, we will fish that last fish out of the sea. When given the chance, we will put that last animal on the common lands, and it will destroy it. So according to Garrett Hardin, we're selfish, viciously selfish. So much so that it might be the undoing of the human race. Okay? So the theory was we absolutely cannot avoid being selfish. And now we have this discussion that we're having on population, knowing that we're all selfish in this way. What should we do? And what was his suggestion? Do you remember? Okay, I have a couple of quotes here for you. All right. To find a way to avoid the evils of overpopulation without relinquishing any of the privileges they now enjoy. This is one of our problems, right? We want to resolve this problem, but we don't want to have to give anything up. Of course, we also have groups that say, no, this isn't a problem. It doesn't exist, right? So that's another double issue in terms of how it's treated, right? So he's famous for saying this: each man is locked into a system that compels him, system being capitalism, that compels him to increase his herd without limit in a world that is limited, right? So the idea is that, according to him, we need to legislate temperance. What does that mean? What does legislating something mean? Law. Okay, what's temperance?
Moderate.
Behavior, right? Your behavior temperance. So if we want to be able to survive, according to Garrett Hardin, we absolutely need to rely on law. Coercive. And if we're not coercive, people just are going to be too selfish and just can't figure out how to get along, because the nature of being human is selfish. Remember, we talked about altruism. Did we talk about altruism in this class? Maybe we didn't. Richard Dawkins. How many people have heard of Richard Dawkins? One. Okay. Richard Dawkins wrote a book called The Selfish Gene. And he said there's no such thing as altruism. Altruism meaning unselfish acts. He said there's absolutely no such thing as altruism, right? Again, theory. But his opinion was this: hey, we all do good things, but we do them out of some motivation. Meaning, we've learned in society that if we're nice, we'll get along with others. We might even be desirable as friends, as a mate, as a whatever have you. So it's in our best interest to act selflessly. But according to this theory, selflessness doesn't exist. We've been taught to be this way for the better interest of our genes or our society or whatever have you. Okay? So again, the same idea, there is no such thing as selflessness. We absolutely cannot expect cooperation. So if you remember, this was an address, the Advancement of American Science Association. Okay? And when he said these things, it was shocking because he went further and he said, people shouldn't even have the right to breed. Kind of with that same idea. If this is about something that is limited in resources for human survival, if we're talking about justice and equity, if we're saying that we're naturally selfish, we got to stop people from their population control or their population spikes. We must control population, according to him. Okay? So this is the theory that Garrett Hardin says. We're headed towards disaster. The world, all of our commons are being destroyed. We expect this because we're selfish. The only thing that we can do is the Leviathan state. How many people know what I'm talking about? No, we're feeling you. Leviathan. I think it's Leviathan. Okay. How many people know what that is? And don't say Calvin. Okay, thank you. Yay! Okay. Thomas Hobbes. Is it Thomas? Is it Thomas? Yeah, Thomas. Thomas Hobbes wrote a book called The Leviathan. On the front cover, you can see this big, huge, like lion-looking thing, right? What is it? What was that book about? Does anybody know? Well, we need more philosophy, don't we? We're missing philosophy. So this is in the area of the social contract theorists. And among them, we had John Locke. We had some of these others, right, that you might recognize. Rousseau, okay? And they said, oh, we cooperate, and we're good at cooperating, and societies are developed with mutual aid and assistance. And Thomas Hobbes came in and he said, nah, we got to legislate everything. We got to make sure that we can act together because we're selfish. We have to have lots of rules, right? We have to have lots of coercion. Okay, so different approaches. One, we can cooperate, and it's our natural capacity to do so. The other is, no, we don't. We're selfish, and we need to be able to have laws to get along, right? In essence, the freedom to breed is intolerable, right? This is the approach from Garrett Hardin. Okay, so how many people have heard of game theory? Okay, what do we know about game theory? Do you have any examples of any games?
There's the prisoner's dilemma.
Love it. The prisoner's dilemma. Okay. So the idea, two people get caught in a crime, right? They get separated, right? And they get investigated by the police, right? That's how it goes. And there are different points that you can score when you're playing the game, right? So if you cooperate, right, I think you both go free or something like that.
If you work together, you'll both go free.
If you work together, you both go free. If one squeals and the other one doesn't, the one that doesn't goes to jail, the one that squeals goes free. Right? And they play it over and over again so that you end up teaching yourself, right?
Yeah, then there's the hare.
And the hawk and the hawk and the dove. Hawk dove, that's another one. The hare and what?
I think it's like a hare and
A hare and a doe. That'd be okay. All
I
right.
can't remember what it was, but it was two.
So why are we looking at all this stuff? Why do we care about game theory? Why are we doing this in economics, environmentalism, and all the like? It's about cooperation, right? The idea is, hey, is it really true that we're so selfish, or can we interact with others and teach ourselves stuff, right? And the idea was, hey, if we play that game with the prisoners over and over again, call it iterated, right? Because it's over and over again. We start to learn. Like last time, if you got me in trouble, this time I'm going to get you in trouble, right? And then we slowly teach each other to the point where like, maybe if we can cooperate, we can both go free, right? And eventually we end up teaching each other and cooperating. So there is a new approach to looking at a solution where we can cooperate. Okay? Possible that we teach each other and end up cooperating as a natural thing. Okay, so this is kind of the opposite theory to the selfish theory, right? Problems, though, come down when we look at the natural resources. And we have some different kinds of natural resources. So one would be called open access, means everybody has access to it. Okay? How about the air? Everybody got access to the air? Kind of, yeah, right? That'd be a good example of open access. How about the ocean? Kind of, yeah, although we do have like country barriers, right? You know, the law of the sea used to only be a mile, 2 miles off of our coast. What's the law of the sea of our jurisdiction of our country now? 250 miles. Good knowledge. Very good. Excellent. Okay, so we've expanded our claim, right? So what is actually open access? And open to everybody is a little bit different. We might call our national parks open access, although there's a little bit of control, like we can't go there on the holidays and things like that when the country shuts down the government, right? Okay, but that's what open access means. When we were looking at, bless you, when we were looking at terraforming, one of the things that we found was that their water was open access. And that meant that if one farmer on the ditch cleaned the ditch, what would happen to the water? It'd go down to all of the farmer's fields, right? And the other fields, trickles, right? Okay, so one farmer cleans the ditch, everybody got to clean the ditch. Oh, yeah, right? And we also found that there were some farmers that didn't like cleaning the ditch. A pain in the butt. I got a bad back. I don't want to do it. Whatever have you. Can't on that day, right? So we had some that were not cooperating, right? And then they would show up expecting water, right? So we had some different relationships of people to that open access. And we had conflicts. We had one farmer that was well known to suck all the water down to his patches. Some people even called him the beaver because we'd see this little damming up there and then all the water was going down to his place, right? And when it happened, a neighboring farmer got so angry, he said, this is not cool, this is not great, he does this all the time. I'm gonna go take care of this, right? And he went and he took Roundup, y'all know what that is, right? Sprayed his field. Right? We have little patches, right? A quarter-acre patches all over. Took a whole quarter-acre patch, sprayed the whole thing in Roundup, all died. That's a pretty penny. So next thing you know, the other farmers headed after the farmer with a big shovel ready to beat the crap out of him. Back and forth it went like this. So there was conflict over it. In the end, the resolution was, we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to have any blockages in our ditch anymore. So it was resolved, right? Albeit informally, albeit through some kind of a minor conflict, but it was resolved. And in that conflict, we taught each other somewhat about how to cooperate a little bit more, right? And we were kind of quiet for a while. Didn't have to worry about water for a while. Got resolved, right? So open access can have those kinds of arrangements with them. Private property, sometimes we say, oh, well, let's just buy all the property and put it into conservation. Other modes of conserving land don't work. Parks, you think parks work for conservation? What do you think? Not so well. We'll talk about that as we go along, right? So the Nature Conservancy, by example, buys up large areas of land and puts it into private conservation. That's one example of private property, right? Communal property, where we have, by example, the Mayagna sharing an area of property, meaning that they're having to negotiate on their population levels as they do that, right? If they don't, then they have conflict. State property, we know what this is, right? Okay. Let's not go into co-management right now. Our concern about the people that are using open common areas is this term that we use. It's kind of a nasty term, that we use called free riding, right? And we mean, hey, what happens if somebody violates the rules? If one person violates the rules, it's possible to do it again. And the more people that violate the rules, the more difficult we have. I mean, example of common resources, meaning air. When we had the IPCC meet in Copenhagen one year, gosh, I want to say it was during 2012 or something like that. Maybe it was 2010. We met in Copenhagen, and all the countries came in with suggestions. We're going to drop our carbon consumption and output by China came in, they said 20%. Look out, sorry. We're going to drop our carbon emissions by 20%, said China. Wow, think about that. Huge, huge. And we came in and we said, we came in on the last day. It was really irritating. It was really kind of obnoxious. Came in on the last day and said, maybe we can drop 4% of our carbon emissions, but it depends on Congress. And Congress didn't even approve it. So we came in and said we were going to help with this area, but it ended up being that the largest consumer of all goods and services and the environment out there in the world, us, couldn't come in with a contribution. So in that regard, we were playing that role. What happens when you get a lot of people that violate the rules? Other people gonna stick to the rules? Oh man, he's cutting down the tree. I want to cut down the tree and send my kids to college, right? Chief said this to us one day. I was like, oh no, right? So it causes for more problems. So if those people that are taking advantage of the system aren't caught, or if there aren't rules there, or if the rules don't make any sense, or if the punishment doesn't make any sense, then we're not really able to protect the environment, okay? So this is part of that issue of the tragedy. Okay, how are we doing on time? I think I'll just stop there for now, okay? I'll leave you with my favorite comic about Hawaii. The spirit of a place. Did you like that? I've actually seen
If only you could do that at the DMV.
Pardon?
If only you could do that at the DMV.
I know, the DMV. I've seen this at some places in Kauai at the
really?
government offices. Maybe because it's an outside island. Okay, I'm going to turn off my audio so that we can